All right, so we're sitting down with Jolene Noble with Jackknife Creek Cattle. And Jolene, I want you to just go ahead and tell everybody where you're at and then go into depth as far as your farming and ranching operation there. And yeah, tell us a bit about yourself.
Perfect. So, as Justin mentioned, my name's Jolene Noble, and I farm with my family up in Manning, Alberta. So, approximately a 6 hour drive north of Edmonton up in the Peace Country. And we have a grain and cow calf operation, and that's with my parents and my brother. And we also do some direct sales for beef, so we do finish some of our own beef.
Perfect. And the Peace Valley is not in the southern part of Canada at all. So where is that located?
So we would be approximately like a 12-hour drive north of the American border, if you went up into the northwest corner of Alberta. So the piece is kind of secluded from the rest of Alberta. There's a band of trees between us and the rest, but actually a lot of farmland up here, both grain and cattle. And like the unique thing
So
about the piece is that we
yeah.
have a lot of daylight in the summer, not so much in the winter, like a lot of long nights. But we make up for our lack of heat just with the sheer number of daylight hours that we have, especially around the end of June.
Yeah, I think that's such a fascinating, unique tidbit about that area. It's pretty cool. So up there, you do things differently as far as growing forage and keeping your cattle grazing. Just give me the high level view of your philosophy of raising cattle, where you're at there in your operation.
Yeah, so for years, like my grandfather had cattle, he got out of them. My parents took over the farm and decided to get back into cows. We've looked at a lot of different ways to run a little less capital intensive, I guess you could say. That started with mom and dad looking at our calving season and going, I don't know if a calving barn is quite in the budget, so let's try the spring calving. So we've stuck with spring calving ever since. We've moved from April to May primarily. Um, our parents always did bale grazing. That was a big part of their winter feeding strategy. And we have since, in the last um, 6 to 8 years, moved to a later weaning date. We used to always wean in October, start in November, but we've been pushing those calves a weaning date into February and sometimes even getting closer to the start of March. But we put those pairs out on swath grazing. So from summer pasture, they go out onto swath grazing as soon as summer pasture starts to decline in quality, and they'll go out on swaths and they'll graze there. We aim for the start of February. Sometimes we get yields that mean that's later. Sometimes we get yields that mean it's earlier. And then they come home, cows go on bale grazing, and calves will be separated off and go on hay and a bit of barley.
So if you're weaning in February, you've got pairs that have to have a pretty decent nutritional plane, both the cows and the calves, to get you through December and January. So how do you do that in a swath? How do you develop that
So
mix?
we were concerned about that to begin with. And actually, the first year we did swath grazing, we were worried about the amount of feed that we had because we had a dismal hay crop. We were very, very worried. It was super dry and then super wet. And so we decided in December, we brought the cow herd home, we stripped the calves off, we sold the calves before Christmas, and the cows went back out on swaths. Turns out we completely underestimated how much material was there because the cows stayed out on swaths until April 15th that year. And all worries about how high a quality the swath was in terms of nutrition were waived that year because we pulled more calves than we ever have, really, just because our cows were too heavy. The nutrition was
Sure.
too good, and so they aren't allowed back on swaths unless they're working and have a calf outside, because it's too high for our cows, and we ended up with some pretty fat cows and some pretty big calves in utero. So we make sure to have a really broad mix. The first time we tried swath grazing was with straight oats, and it did not work well for us. But since then, we've gone to more of a cover crop or polycrop, however you want to say that. So the main workhorses in it are still a spring cereal, but we've got forage peas in there, a couple different types of brassicas and hairy vetch. And then we do throw a few more things in there just for diversity, for nutrition, but also more primarily for soil health. And so we throw in a couple of warm seasons like sunflowers and buckwheat and millet. And we'll throw in another cool season like Italian rye, but those will be in a smaller portion compared to the brassicas, cereal, hairy vetch, and peas. Those are the main ones. And so we get our feed tested every year, and our protein and our energy continue to be high, as high as we need for growing calves and lactating cows and cows that are in there pushing in, like they're at their end of the second trimester by the time we bring them home. So we've been very pleased. Our open rates have improved, actually. Our calving interval has tightened up, and our calves have never looked as good as they do now.
How do you think, I want to get into depth as far as that blend and the management of it and planting it since spring's coming up here. But as far as the management of the swath grazing and the quality of just the health quality of your livestock, can you talk on that point? Like obviously you said your calves are heavier. If you were typically or previously weaning in December and selling those calves, and now you're stretching that to February, what have you seen in terms of weight gain increases and total value of calves sold and health of the herd and those sort of things?
Um, so I'd actually have to go back and look at numbers to see exactly how much heavier calves were. We've also had a switch to smaller cows, so that's going to impact it as well. But we don't. One thing, like our buyer, he said that those calves are now going more into a feedlot and less into the grasser market because of the size of them. The other thing, that's not a hard number, but we always noticed that with our perennial pastures, especially because our older pastures were more brome based, we ended up with a decline in protein and energy on those pastures. And so those calves get a little bit gutty. They get that long hair on their bellies, and they just
Hmm.
don't look as good. Like you know you're setting them back because they're not getting what they need in September and October. And we didn't have a good answer for that. So when they came into the backgrounding pen, sure, they can go on hay. We can give them some barley. But when we weaned in October, the start of November, invariably we would have some sort of pneumonia, we would have some bloat, we would have like all those issues that you normally have in a pen of young calves that are under at some degree of stress. But
Hmm.
like knock on wood, we haven't had anything ill on swath grazing in the last like 5 or 6 years that we've been doing it this way with a later weaning date. I mean, I hope that that day doesn't come because they are in the middle of nowhere with no corrals and no power and usually quite a bit of snow. So I mean, like not the most ideal conditions to try and catch a calf and treat it. But honestly, like the extensive system and keeping them on mum seems to do wonders for the calf health. And they just, because we're moving them on to swaths before, or like we're not leaving them on perennial pasture, when the quality declines, we're just
Yeah.
seeing those calves not skip that beat in between lush summer pasture and high quality winter forage or winter rations.
Yeah. Just keep going up.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's huge.
And we're hoping to,
So
like, I
the
think it goes well that our replacement heifer calves stay on their mom and learn all of this as well. So we're hoping to see better longevity in our herd as well with our heifer calves. I've heard a couple of speakers talk about this, about later weaning dates being related to cow longevity, and we're really hoping to see that as well. And you can definitely tell, like, the replacement heifers when they go out onto swaths as breds, they don't miss a beat. Like they know how to dig.
Yep, they learn. There's no doubt about it. As far as setting this field up correctly, you mentioned you also have, grain that you're farming for too. So this swath grazing mix, how are you? moving forward with your spring forage plan, incorporating it into your crop rotation and moving those fields and then seeing any sort of soil health benefits from that as well?
So yeah, like you said, we grain farm as well. So pretty much any field that is close enough to the home yard that has a water source, so a dugout, is something that we will swath graze at some point in time. We usually only swath graze 1 or 2 years in a row. With a diverse mix like that, you can end up with some weed pressure if you do it year over year, especially because um, you're you're not doing anything in the fall to kill those weeds. So
Yeah,
that can be a
yeah, great
concern.
point.
But if we rotate out every year or two, then that allows us for weed control in other years. We we do use, like, because we have the equipment. I know that that's a sticking point for a lot of guys. We have the equipment to seed annuals every year. We have separate tanks for oats, peas, small seed, that type of deal. But I do know of lots of guys that will mix everything in the same tank and go ahead and seed it. There are ways to do this, even if you don't have like the exact equipment that you think you need. There are ways around that problem, but we do use a hoe drill with a knife opener, low disturbance, but allows us to seed oats, peas, and small seeds separately and meter them out separately.
Okay. And that can happen anytime in May as soon as the fields fit?
Yeah, so I do more of the forage side. My brother does more of the crop side, so it's a little push and pull. Sometimes I want some forage in
Yeah.
before some of the canola acres are seeded or something like that. But in all reality, swath grazing actually is a great fit for that, because it's best if it's seeded at the very end of May or into June, just so that the oats don't turn really early in August, so you don't have to cut it quite as early. So it works really well for us.
Yeah, perfect. So that's the swath grazing piece of the whole forest plan. What else do you have going in this year as far as harvestable feed or other grazing acres that you have planned for?
So, I mean, we have all of our perennial pasture, of course. We do put in quite a bit of legume into those mixes. So we use alfalfa quite heavily, but we also put in Sicer milk vetch and sandfoin as non-bloating legumes with tannins in them, to combat bloat on our cows. And the grasses that we predominantly use, orchard grass and softleaf tall fescue are the main ones, but we also have some meadow brome in those pastures as well, and a little bit of red clover typically. So they'll go on perennial pasture as soon as the grass starts growing, until, like, it does depend on the season how dry we are, anywhere from the end of August to the middle of October. And they'll go on primarily grass pastures as they calve in May with a good sod base. So your smooth bromes and that type of thing. And then they'll be moved on
Yep.
to more of our mixed pastures later on. Other than swath grazing, we do have a small field adjacent to the home quarter that we'll seed into probably our green feed relay mix. And so it'll be a mix of annual ryegrass, Italian ryegrass, and hairy vetch that we'll seed with a forage oat, and we'll take bales off that the start of August, and then we'll let that come back and regrow. And it's just a great place if we bring the cow herd home and they have to go somewhere for a day during vaccination, processing, whatever, they can go there. But it's also a great
Okay.
place for finishing animals to go, because that's going to be a really high plane of nutrition. And so it's just as much as we cross fence everything, and on perennial pasture we're moving every day and that kind of stuff, it is nice for some of those smaller groups of cattle that it's hard to fence for them, small areas. It's nice to have some place that they can go, and we can just turn them out, and we don't have to worry about
Yep.
that group.
Yep. Yeah, there are always certain times of the year where you just have to have them be for a few days, it seems like.
Yeah,
So
and with the grain
it's a good home.
operation, like when everybody's full steam with harvest, it's nice to have somewhere we can just throw them. And we've done that before. We've actually underseeded our barley grain crops to Italian ryegrass, and then had a few weeks of grazing for our whole cow herd, and we just turn them into the whole place, because it's all the same material, so they don't really graze it unevenly. So we've done that before as well, and it's worked out well.
Sure. I would want to be a cow on your place. You're talking about orchard grass and STF or soft leaf tall fescue and
Yeah.
Sane Point and milk veg. Just high quality good
All the
stuff.
tasty stuff, all the high quality stuff. I promise I won't
Hmm.
feed you Timothy.
Yeah. Limited crested wheatgrass. That's good stuff. What about your outlook here for the beef industry and kind of planning for the future within your herd as far as expansion and other opportunities that way? What do you see coming?
Well, like anybody knows, like it's a very exciting time in the beef industry. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we went through 2021 with low moisture across the board and cattle flooding the market and prices tanking, especially when you're looking at cull cows and bred cows. I mean, there wasn't a difference, and that wasn't a good thing. Now there's now if you see it and there's not much of a difference, it's still a good thing because cull cows are so high. But
Yeah, true.
that period of time, it wasn't, and so it's definitely a rosy outlook. And I mean, we're seeing we're seeing unprecedented highs. And so we were actually, because we didn't have a lot of opens, I'm overstocked by quite a few breads, and we just don't have the summer pasture. We were a little overstocked last year, but had the moisture, and now we're definitely overstocked. And if we get any dry weather, it will be an issue. I won't have what I need to feed cows. So we were looking at selling some breads. But with the market the way it is, we kind of took a look at it and went, do you know what? I think it's going to be a better choice for us to hang on to these cows and calve them out if we can. And that's where like some of these new well, not new forage strategies, but out of the box forage strategies
Yeah,
come into
alternative
play.
and yep.
And and part of that is because we have the grain land. So we looked at it and we're taking some acres out of grain this year and we're putting them into an annual forage mix, because if our summer pasture gives out end of July or middle of August or something, we need a bridge to get us to when we were going to start swath grazing. So instead of selling those cows like we would have traditionally, or trying to buy and feed, which is difficult in my area, we can just seed another few acres or whatever of annual mix, and we can summer graze that, we can swath graze it, we can do whatever we want with it as the season progresses. But we're set up to be able to retain those cows, feed them out, and wean those calves off of them and send them to market. So that's great to see.
That's fantastic. Yeah, you're not the first person I've talked to that has had those same thoughts and are planning the same way. I mean, even on a stocker side of things, there's folks that are saying, well, I can now, because the value of a pound of beef is worth so much, I know that I can run calves, stockers on my annual forage mix, and as long as I'm capturing enough gain, whether it's 2.5 pounds per of gain per day, I know that I can capture enough value per acre to justify not planting a harvestable cash crop and punt it to a foraged pounds of beef in back in
Yeah.
value. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. I think it's exciting, and because of what you just said with the annual forages, it opens up so much flexibility, versatility with these blends. We can capture gain, and we can also capture a lot of great things just for diversity of soil health quality too moving forward. That's probably long term going to be beneficial to our cash crop, and when that turns back, now we can take advantage of that and plant a cash crop that in turn does better as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we've even used annual before, like when we're cycling out an old pasture, if we want to reseed it, we'll just plant it to annual for a couple of years, whether that's a grain crop or annual forage. But we've used annual forage as a bridge to get us from one perennial stand to another. And that's something years ago that wasn't really on our radar of what we were doing. We might plant some
Mm,
oats or something like that. But in terms of like a diverse mix with a higher protein content and that kind of thing, like this opens up some doors for us for sure.
perfect. I like it. Well, this is good. Is there anything else that we missed as far as what you have planned for this year with your forage plan and the upcoming spring?
I think that's pretty close to it. If there's anything else you want me to chat about, by all means. But I guess like the one other thing is we do finish out some more of our beef now because we're doing direct to consumer and we're doing that in a larger and larger way. That's the majority of our calf crop now. And traditionally, like if we were weaning in October, those calves would go in a backgrounding lot and they would go on grain. And I mean, to a certain extent, some of that's still true, but a, a lot of our butcher animals, our yearlings, they go out on swath grazing with the cows. And that's where they are for part of the winter. And there will be others at home that are on hay and barley, but we grow a cover crop that is fairly cold tolerant at home, specifically for those animals. So they'll be on summer pasture, but as soon as that quality starts to decline in August, we pull those butcher animals off that because we need the gains, and they'll go on to a cold tolerant cover crop, and that is what they're getting fed every day along with a barley ration. And so it works out really well for us. The gains are awesome, and I would rather see cattle out on pasture than I would in a dry lot any day. So it's
Yeah.
nice to be able to do that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's good stuff. No, I appreciate your take and your overall outlook and philosophy of raising cattle this way. It's refreshing and yeah, thanks for sharing your thoughts about the upcoming spring and forage plans you have put together.
You're welcome.
Alrighty. Thanks, Jolene. We'll see you.
Okay, take care.